Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro, Blood Sorceress, Pioneer, and Necromancer in the Hands of Nine, for a discussion on all topics related to blood sorcery, necromancy, the science of sorcery, and related works of manipulation of energy. Each week, the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogue Ostrowski will explore topics designed to reveal what cannot be seen. Tonight's topic is protection and justice. How do we deal with those people that go from our inner circle to the world of betrayal? To reach us, dial 347-945-7383 and press 1 if you want to ask a question, or join us in the Dark Matters chat room. We'll take calls in the second half of the show. And now, here is the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogue Ostrowski.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for bringing us in tonight.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris, how are you tonight?
Oh, not bad. How's everybody else doing?
Everybody's doing good. Mary, you're good? Mary,
doing
you
good?
You there, Mary? Okay. This is what happens when you have Italian women on the radio. When you have Italian women on the radio, what happens is you have to do 4 minutes of, are you good? Is your family all right? So that's the way it works. So tonight's subject, and do you have cannoli? Tonight's subject is protection and justice, and this is something that I get more questions on from students and clients than just about anything else. Right now, I must have, 5 or 6 clients just dealing with spouses who have gone, let's just say, bad or against the grain of what is acceptable behavior to both their spouse and to children. And I have a number of people right now who have been dealing with people such as that on the inner circle of their lives, who they have all of a sudden or over a period of time discovered have not been acting in an appropriate way and need to be pushed away from them for their own safety. And this is a very, very common question among clients, this sort of thing. The other side of that is justice, and sometimes people don't want to just be safe. They want to see the other person land in a situation that feels like justice to them. I don't know how many of you have listened to me before. I don't know how many of you have studied with me, although a lot of people have. And I can tell you that I leave my moral compass at home when I talk about the work. And by this I mean that everybody has things they will and will not do when it comes to performing sorcery. And I think that there is a wide chasm between sorcery and many, many other forms of energy manipulation and practice in that way. And there's nothing about my work that is operating from a place of light and love. Let's just say that. Someone comes to me and they're in danger, we stamp out the perpetrator in whatever way feels appropriate in the situation. It's really about prevention and looking at where the holes are in yourself and in your world around you. So as we go through this experience, 2 hours on the radio tonight, we're going to be talking about what it means to protect yourself and what kinds of let's just say, false information there is out there about things you can burn and stuff you can say and all of this. And we have Chris with us tonight who has a lot to say about the nonsense of herbs and other circular items, which he will go into. And, the thing that I love about Chris is that, you're going to get the full Chris. When you talk to Chris, you're going to get the full Chris. And that's why when I thought about doing this radio show, I said, let's bring Chris in because he's going to tell you about his experience. So before I go long on ritual and this sort of thing, and, please put your questions in the chat room. Mary will be able to read those to us. And in the second half of the show tonight, if we don't go long in other questions, we will be taking a few callers. That would be at the 9 o'clock hour. So, Chris, you want to open up your thoughts on the subject of protection and justice?
Well, I've found that a lot of the protection, what people tell you in the books just doesn't work. I mean, it's nonsense. What's in there is pretty much the same as when they tell you to hang a cross or a crucifix on your wall and it'll protect you while you're sleeping. It makes you feel good, so you're going to feel like you're protected. It's like trying to stop a bullet with a paper plate just because it's got something on it that says, oh, well, this won't hurt you. It's like, no, it don't work that way. Energy, when you do spell work, you're releasing energy. You can't stop that. If you're dealing with the disincarnate or you're dealing with a demon, you're talking about things that could manifest themselves anywhere. What makes you think that if you just draw a chalk or a salt circle on the ground and you spit some wine in the air that you're going to be protected? It's like, come on a minute. It's like all you need is a strong wind, or like I read on Facebook in one of our sites. Unless the person you're dealing with has high blood pressure or is a slug, it's not going to do any damn good. And whoever said that, I should look it up, but that was brilliant.
I remember seeing that. Yeah. Your point is extremely well taken, Chris. And let me just jump in for a second, and I'll get out of your way, because there is an issue here tonight that is very important. Are we talking about protection and justice when another human being crosses the boundaries, or are we talking about protection and justice, or just protection at least, from demons and irate or unstable disincarnate? Because I want to talk about all those things tonight. Those are three very, very different things. And, Chris, to your point, it's very much like when you go to court. I mention this all the time, put your hand on the Bible. I might as well have my hand on a box of Cracker Jacks. It wouldn't matter to me at all. If that's the material I have to swear to, then that's going to be irrelevant. All I'm going to bring is my own integrity. So these sorts of ersatz, icons, and these sorts of sudden solutions are useless. The ring of salt and spitting wine and the kinds of things that you talked about are significant objects and rituals in other paths. And if the practitioner knows what those energies are supposed to represent and can send them out, that's a very different thing than somebody picking up a book that says, put a ring of salt and use some rum and this kind of thing. So the type of protection and justice that we're talking about can vary from types of practice to types of practice, but at the end of the day, as all sorcery or any manner of energy manipulation, any manner of magic, ritual or otherwise, has to work. And if you are trying to activate those over-the-counter prescriptions for it, which is what it kind of feels like, and at the end of the day, either you still have an angry disincarnate after you, you're still dealing with a demon, or somebody who is living has crossed you and is still in your way, then that didn't work. So I agree with your point, Chris. And do you want to say something else about that? You want to go on with that?
Well, what I think about the salt and all that, if you were raised or properly trained, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much out there that is a conglomeration of bullshit. It isn't funny. It's like pieces borrowed from all kinds of different religions, pasts, and all that. And like I tell everybody I talk to, if you want to do this, if you want to follow a quote-unquote path specific to a religion or a lifestyle or whatever, you've got to know what these people are thinking. You've got to know what the ancestors did and things like that. What did they do for protection? Now, over here, we got the idea that a rabbit's foot's lucky. You go over to Russia, and that's the worst thing you could ever have in your pocket is a rabbit's foot.
Mm-hmm.
Because rabbits are considered over there like our black cats are over here. Mm-hmm. So if you don't understand what you're doing, it's not going to work anyway.
So the cultural application of the thing is vital.
Sure.
We talked about before, and we were talking before the show about various American Indian heritage and this kind of thing. And I just want to make it clear, my work, although I am Sicilian, is not based in a particular ideology about the thing. My work is all based on physics and the manipulation of energy and the power of the static practice, being in the chaos void and being able to manipulate things so that at the end of the day you are using the energy that you have to construct that which is necessary or desired. So although I have a very strong attachment to the use of blood in work, and that, in and of itself, of course, is not particular to, but not foreign to, my Sicilian heritage. The actual work that I do is not based on any divinities or deities. But we come across a lot of people who become sudden shamans. This is a phrase that I've been using lately. The sudden shaman, the white office girl. Well, here come the cards and letters. The white office girl who decides all of a sudden, because she bought a turquoise belt, that she can leave you through your last 10 lives and find your spirit animals. And if you want to find them, all you have to do is go on the internet. Those of us who spent decades and decades in this work, doing this work alone, sort of some snicker, some frown. I snicker at that sort of thing. But protection is a serious thing. And Chris, you've come across people who have asked you to do protection work for them. And by the time they get to you, have they tried other things?
Sometimes I get the ones that, hey, I've tried this, I don't know what to do. I've tried like legal means, which I always tell people, it's like, well, did you try a restraining order? Did you try, going some other route before you get to this point? Because when I do it, I don't screw around. It's like I don't do anything half-assed, and I don't look at it as, oh, God, I don't want to stereotype this, but you're asking me to do a job, this is my job. I don't have any side in what's going on. You say this is happening, okay, fine, I take you at your word. If I find out you lie to me, you're going to have a problem. But if you say this is going on, okay, it's going on. I will take care of it. So...
That's a very powerful point, Chris. That's a very powerful point. Go follow that for a while. I want to bring Mary in on the divination aspect of that. Go ahead.
So, like I said, I tell everybody, please go the legal route. Please make sure everything else, hey, sometimes all you got to do is sit down with the person and say, hey, this is what's going on, please stop it. And, sometimes that does work. Try to be civilized, try to do what you can, then we'll go otherwise. And I don't think, unless you know exactly what you're doing or you've got somebody's guidance, don't try it on by yourself. Because if it backfires, you're going to really be screwed.
You mean don't try protection work on
right.
by yourself unless you have guidance? Well, the truth is that you could cost somebody their life.
Sure.
Because if somebody is being pursued by any number of things, whether it's demonic or it's disincarnate or it's their ex-lover, and you say, oh, yes, I put the protection on you, and you haven't, what happens is the person starts to feel a sense of calm or bravado. And then they come forward with that calm or bravado, making themselves vulnerable. So if the protection is not in place, then there can be a situation where they're actually in more danger. I will say, though, to your point, Chris, it's a good thing, it's a legal thing. But when people come to me, I'm usually the third, fourth, or fifth person they've come to in the area of manipulation and sorcery and magic. So when they come to me, I'm going to get the job done. But they come to me, with a suitcase of all the legal stuff they've done already. I get the ones who are teeter-tottering on the edge of doing something themselves to the person to make it stop, or someone who has crossed from experiencing aggravation from disincarnate or a demon to really starting to feel like it's overwhelming their life, taking them over, or even possessing them. So when they get to me, I find, this has been my experience, that, all those other options have been well tapped. Mary, let me ask you a question, because I know that Mary's an extraordinary divinator. And you want to know stuff about how it might be. This is the woman to talk to. And then if it comes apart, tell me and I'll fix it. Mary, people come to you and they say to you, my ex-boyfriend is, harassing me, and I want you to make him stop. Now, I know that you don't do as much, is my understanding, you don't do as much work in the area of sorcery at this point with clients, but you do very masterful divination. And if you see that they're not telling the truth, what do you do with that?
Well, I have I've brought people to a place of, let's talk about that. So when I look at the information that I'm getting, I'm hearing that, you're still calling him, you're still texting him. I mean, I have to say, I just bust him.
Yes.
Because it's, there's always a half-truth that comes out. Most of the time there's this half-truth, and you have to kind of dig into it to see really what they've done. Because they come to you sometimes in a frenzy. They're just, the energy is so heightened, and they're in all this chaos, and sometimes you have to say, okay, let's get to, the void. Let's get there and see what's going on, because if you take them at their word sometimes, it can be that they're a jilted lover and they're trying to get back at their ex-boyfriend for dating their sister, which I've seen I've run into before.
Well, this is what I'm asking, because when people come to me and they say, I want him dead, I get that. I get that more often than you think I do. And I say, okay, well, what did he do? And I'll say, well, he did this and he did this. And I say, well, look, here's my experience of this thing is. In this situation, a year from now, you won't remember who he is, so this kind of extreme response is not necessary. When people come to me and tell me that like I have a client that came into my life in the last 48 hours who tells me that her ex-husband, she found out, had sexually abused their 3-year-old, their 5-year-old, and their 7-year-old. And I have these wonderful things called attending demons that go look at the story and give me information. So in that sense, I am completely constructed to see validity in things. And it turns out, as a matter of fact, she happens to be right. So we're going to meet and have a discussion about this because the courts don't believe her. And he actually gets custody every other weekend of the 3 kids. And they come home and they're destroyed and they're a mess, and she has to pick up the pieces, but she can't seem to grasp any evidence that makes sense. So when we talk about protection and justice, and I just want to go in this direction for a second, one of the things that I say to people is when you ask me to do protection for you, make sure the lions that I'm protecting you from, none of them are in the house. Because by your house, I mean your environment. None of them are still connected to you. Because when I put protection over someone, it's a dome and it's solid. And I don't mean a dome like in that blue light, witchy poostess way. I mean it's truly, I love that word. It's truly a powerful energy that other people cannot break through. And if that which you want me to protect you from is still in there with you, it can't get out either. And this is what I talk to people about protection, because when you say to me that someone is doing something horrible to you, and then I realize, they're still kind of sleeping together, or he's still coming over, or this kind of thing, or that, you have these very important vetting experiences that you have to go through when you decide that you're going to help someone protect themselves from something that's horrible. So, as a sorcerer, one is always on the side of having to make massive adjustments and just accept it. This is why I don't accept karma, because if there was karma, there wouldn't be sorcery. Things would just even themselves out, even if it was over long periods of time. But when people come to me with extraordinary things, protection and justice is definitely on the table, as often is what I will call banishment, which means at any point that person is removed in a significant way, one way or the other. This is an adult audience. That is my desire anyway. And I imagine that one can read between the lines as to how far one can be banished. So do we want to direct this show for a little while at the living before we start talking about protection from the disincarnate and from demons? Because I think that we really have 3 structures here that we should be talking about. Any thoughts, Chris?
I have one thing that I want to say, because it reminded me when you were talking, Sorceress, about protection and not being in the room. When I was a teenager, I was reading, this is no bullshit, article in Hustler magazine. It was an interview with Anton.
But you didn't buy it for the article.
No, I didn't buy it at all. It was given to me.
All right, I'm just a little humor. That was my attempt at humor.
Yeah, and it had Anton LaVey in it doing an interview, And supposedly, I don't know the validity of it, that Anton LaVey was the reason that Jane Mansfield died in the car wreck that she was in. Supposedly, she took out a hit, basically, on her husband. And she went through him to do it. And he warned her, make sure you stay away from him until after it happens.
Yes.
And she didn't listen, supposedly, and that's how she ended up killing herself, basically, in the car, and her husband ended up living. So
that is a powerful, powerful story, and probably true. Because when you put protection and justice on someone, right now I have a client who will not stay away from her husband. She will not do it. No matter what I do, she will not just stay away from him. She really needs for him to disappear. She needs for him to be out of their lives. She will not stay away from him. So I say to her, I'm stopping and starting the work, and I'm getting ready to stop the work, because when you tell me that you had an interaction, I say, were you 3,000 miles away? Was it on Skype? And she says, no, it was in the living room. I say, well, I cannot bring him to the wildest rage he needs to be in so his head explodes with you doing that, because if that's going to happen, then you're in the energy of that, and it's very, very serious, and you're going to get hurt. So, you can guess what happened. I brought him to a fever pitch, which is what I need to do to get him in the let's just say, medical condition he needs to be in. She would not stay away from him, and there was a physical interaction. And this is what happens when you deal with protection and you deal with banishment and justice on this level. I think that story is most probably true. I mean, if you accept Anton LaVey as a sorcerer, which many do, and he must have had some kind of juice to create the life that he created for himself, then the logistics of that story makes perfect sense. What do you think, sir?
Well, like I said, when I read it, it was like, well, yeah, this does make sense that, this is, I could see this happening. Now, granted, I was a teenager, so my questioning started way in my youth. That I was picking up a book and actually, instead of looking at the women on the next page, I'm reading the story. So, and I've seen this before, where they won't stay away. And you also got to think ahead. Now, I've had relationships that went bad. And then you find out later on that you end up becoming friends or whatever with this person. You got to make up your mind that, this is permanent. This isn't something that, you're going to take away. I won't go back and forth. It's like, well, put it on this week, but take it off next week. No, I ain't going to do that. That's garbage. We don't work like that. You want it done, it gets done. If you have the slightest doubt in your mind that this is what you want done, and you can't stay away from this person, then I ain't doing it. Forget it.
I'm really glad we're going in this direction, because clients or whatever you call the people who come to you for the work, participation is a really important part of this thing, because they can come to you for all manner of protection, and then you find out that they're backtracking or they're not telling you the whole story, and this kind of thing goes on all the time. So when I talk to people who want to, I teach quite a bit, and when I talk to people who want to do this work, I don't really like to say the words for a living, but as their main thing that they do in their life, as their all-encompassing choice of careers, professions, paths, whatever word you like to use, I say to them, the same way when I wrote the book Divination, and it was a manual for the practitioner of how to handle the process of divination. I say to the people who are listening, who are sorcerers, who are practitioners in any way, that your side of this thing is so vital, aside from the sorcery or the magic, whatever language you use, that you actually do. Your side in the participation of this thing is vital. And when a client is playing around like this, when a client is saying to you, oh, but, maybe I still love him, the option to say no is vital, and you should use it. One year I started to figure out these numbers. This year I haven't figured it out. But a year ago, about all through 2013, I looked at this. And it turned out that when it came to people who wanted to study with me, I was saying yes to 1 out of every 14 to even just take a class. And when it came, and then of course that number even broadened further as when it came to people who wanted to study privately with me, but I don't really talk about those numbers. And when it came to clients, there were periods of time where it was like 1 in 20, because they come to you with such a story that might not hold up, that doing the work, and I'm not talking about whether it's appropriate or not, I'm talking about whether it's useful. Whether it's useful to keep a person away from their children based on what somebody else said, or whether it's useful to keep a person away from a demon when they are trying, sort of behind your back, to activate further this agreement or this commitment with the demon. And it's very important from the point of view of the practitioner, to be standing in the truth of the work. Mary, do you get that kind of thing come across your table?
I do. I mean, people, what I was going to say about this as I was listening to both you, and then we have a couple of comments from the chat room, was that people really get driven on emotion. They come to you and they, like sorcerers, like you say, they come to you and say, I want you to kill my husband, or I want you to kill my wife. And then, they're in that moment. And then you say, well, is that really what you want? If we go through this and we kind of, take apart the emotion from it, because we're, a blank slate at that point. We're building the work and trying to figure out if the work we're going to do really fits the situation. They're so heightened in the emotion. I mean, I have uttered the words "you're dead" to me before. I'm just saying those may have come out of my mouth before. But have I really wanted to kill somebody? No. But there has been that point where I've said, you're dead to me. That's it. And I'm in such an emotional state. So I think people get confused by that. As some people have serious protection issues that they need to, and justice issues that they need to be worked. And then there's that emotional piece that they think that's what they want, and it really isn't. And so that's our job, is to figure it out.
Right. We have to sort those things out. First of all, I want to just talk about this idea of killing someone. The idea that you can do that is, of course, 100% factual. I'm on the record about this. There are 3 or 4 different ways that, from my point of view, in terms of working the energy, it can be done, that it has been done, and that it will continue to be done in situations where the imminent danger is extraordinary. And those are the situations in which I'm really willing to listen to that. When someone says to me, I want you to kill my husband, and I will say, this is a very interesting thing. I've been doing this for a very long time. I cannot think of more than 3 times when a man has come to me and said, I want you to kill my wife. But I have had dozens and dozens and dozens of requests from the other side. So my point is that it's an emotional thing. Many times people are in that state, and then when you sit down with them, they say, well, what I really want is I want him to disappear. I want him to get out of my life. But that's not the only parameter, and I'm not usually the one that comes to the table with any kind of limitations. That being said, one of the things that happens a lot is people say, I want that person to never see his kids again, or never see her kids again, and that's about 50-50 on both sides. And when someone says that to me, I have to take a moment and think and do a reading and say, well, I'm going to read this situation and see what it really looks like, because to me, there are things much worse than death. And death I can negotiate. That one makes sense to me. But a person's long-term involvement with their family taking that apart can be complex, and it can be inappropriate if it's not the right choice. So there is a great deal of divination and listening to the client as you move forward. So this kind of thing needs to really, really be scoped out in the larger scale. Mary, did you say you wanted to bring in a comment from the chat room?
I did. There's a couple of really good ones. I know that Morgan brought up the idea of, and he wanted us to all weigh in on this, is he says, I've been trying to dissuade people from putting energy into the walls of their home as some kind of Star Trek-like force field on the grounds that even if it worked, it would be a huge drain of personal energy. Instead, I've been advising them to have smaller protection devices, portable and in the home. And I know Naomi also brought up mirrors, working really well. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about that.
Chris,
different protection devices.
Chris, you want to take that first? Because I'm going to go on and on about it.
Well, I know mirrors they're dated back for centuries. I mean, the shamans in Russia used them when they did healing work. So if there was a demon that they were exorcising, it couldn't get into them. It would see its reflection and go away. I don't know as far as stopping energy. I haven't got into that problem. Usually, if I target somebody, they better have it all the way around them, because just to keep it out of your house isn't going to do it. I mean, okay, I won't get you in your house, but I can get you at work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little difference that, because one of my things is if you want somebody, and this is in one of your books also, Sorceress, if you want to use something against somebody, you got to, sometimes tell them, and this to see how serious they are, I need this item from the person.
Yeah.
If you ask somebody, hey, I need a spoonful of your husband's semen, I'm going to see how dedicated you are to this whole idea. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yes,
getting a couple,
getting a couple hairs out of a brush is no big deal. But it's like, if you want me to do something important or permanent, I want blood. I need something that's a little bit more personal and has more energy. Something that was living at one time. Hair is dead cells.
You push the client to qualify, which is brilliant.
Yes.
You said something I want to ask you about. You said you can get them at work. You can get them. I love that because I want to talk about that as well. But tell us more about that. Tell us what that experience is like.
The way I look to see, a house is too easy. There's too many rooms. There's too many walls. There's too many things in a house that can screw things up. I mean, that's where all your energy, where your electrical appliances are, things like that. Everybody's got to walk outside at some point. Okay?
Yeah.
You can't stay in your house forever. A little something in the front yard, a little something in the bush behind the building, where you walk your dog at night. You pass your trash can every once in a while. You got to carry your trash can to get it outside. It's things that you touch. All those kind of objects you can't isolate yourself from.
So you prefer to work outside of the house when it comes to grabbing somebody for whom the client or your associate wants you to suppress them in some way.
That's what I see the easiest for me to do. I mean, it gets the fastest results.
It's interesting, Chris, because when there's a crime scene in someone's home, say that one spouse kills the other, it's very hard, and I mean, unless it's so obvious what happened, it can be very difficult to rule out the actual person who did that because their stuff is already all over the house. Their fingerprints, their hair, their belongings. They might have come in and walked in the blood. There's many things, and I know that from spending a good deal of time with the medical examiner's office, so this is not like a CSI moment. I really have seen many of these kinds of things where everyone knows what happens, but you can't prove it because the person had every right to be in that place. So your point is well taken. On the other side of that, the way that I work protection and justice is I turn their own items against them. So if you're in the house with your electrical items and the curtains you chose and the furniture you picked out, I'm going to work those items to hold the energy to work against you. So there's definitely strong validity from either side of that thing. But as sorcerers, we have the choice which direction to go to. If somebody is telling me that the person they live with is the person they want protection from, then I require that for myself to remove that person from the premises. People come to me all the time and say, well, we still live together, but I'm afraid of her, or I'm afraid of him. And I say, well, here's what I'm going to do. The first step is I'm going to break that tie of living together. And they say, well, there's no way. Neither of us are employed. It doesn't matter. This is sorcery. Don't talk to me about logistics. I'm not interested. So they will come home with a new apartment, a new lease. They'll get out of that house. They'll find a way out of that house, and they'll take everything that you want them to take with them. That's the way it works. But there are definitely two sides to that, Chris. So it's very interesting, the two perspectives of how you can work waiting for them to come out of the cage, or how you can, poison the floor of the cage. This is very interesting to me.
I look at Mary? It.
I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I talk enough. Let Mary talk.
No, Mary, you have thoughts?
No. Well, yes, no. I as someone who's done magical work and has worked with clients, one of the most wonderful things in the world you can get is some, personal, what we call personal concerns, or their own personal things, and it's so easy to get. People don't realize how easy it is to get things, and so that's always interesting. Is some people pull things aside just in case you need to use it for a later day. I'm just putting that thought out there.
Preparation.
Just saying.
Mary, can you, when you're done with your comment, can you read us Morgan's question again? Because I feel like maybe
sure.
I went somewhere else.
The other thought. That's okay. I think the other thought I have is, I have police officers in the family, and I was working on making sure my apartment was all kind of squared away as far as safety. And he said to me, "Listen, if someone wants to get you, if they want to get in your house, they want to get you. There are some people who will not stop at anything to get you. So you just need to make sure you're protected and you're ready for something like that, instead of like anticipating." Well, let me fix my house and think. He said, if they're going to get you, they're going to get you. If they really have that kind of focus on you, then you have to be ready to battle that focus. It's not going to matter whether you have, an extra lock on your door. They're going to try to get through it, and maybe they'll be successful. So, just a thought on that. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to hear Morgan's question again, but to your point, unless you use sorcery. Because what happens when you use sorcery and you use it appropriately in terms of protection is that guy's not getting in. And there are levels of sorcery that you can use. If someone says to me, I need you to protect me from this individual, and we're still talking about living people, I assume, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put such a layer of protection around them that the thought of coming closer to them from that person will cause unwellness, sickness, devastation, and worse, from the perpetrator side as they approach. There are walls of protection made out of brick, and there's walls of protection made out of whatever it takes to create so that the individual who's coming forward knows, and by knows I mean like at the deeper level from the sense of feeling it, that coming in this direction is danger, and that the approachment of the area of protection is where the danger is. As a car alarm goes off nearby, you can hear I'm sitting by a window, and you can hear a police car of some sort drive by. So talk about protection. But the point is that the kind of protection that you do is an even wider issue. And when I teach classes on protection and justice, then that material, this is only a 2-hour show, I can't really get into that, then that material is readily available. And to that point, the book is not quite ready yet. It will probably be ready in a week or so, the book on protection and justice. We're doing a smaller book just on this subject because the requirements from people, the questions that I get are so heavy that we're doing a transcript of one of the classes so that people will have sort of a mini manual of what protection and justice is really all about. Read Morgan's question to us again.
Sure. Morgan says, I have been trying to dissuade people from putting energy into the walls of their home as some kind of Star Trek-like force field, on the grounds that even if it worked, it would be such a huge drain of personal energy. Instead, I have been advising them to have smaller protection devices, portable and in the home.
Yeah, well, Morgan is brilliant, and we know Morgan, and I am very grateful for Morgan's question. To the point of draining oneself from creating this sort of, as he refers to it as Star Trekian or that kind of experience. And a person who does not have extraordinary experience in sorcery will feel that drain. Those of us who do this at an extraordinary skill level actually gain strength from that process when you do it for yourself or someone else. So that boundary cannot be crossed. You become part of the boundary itself in a way. But the point of having smaller objects is brilliant because protection is based on the kind of protection sorcery that I do and what I teach is based on the triggers, and physics. And what I do is I install into the situation triggers, things that will flip the switch to create a broader gaze of protection, and the object can be the trigger. Now, we all know that if you're carrying, an effigy of someone, it's not the doll, it's the energy surrounding the doll. I mean, this is the power of the classic understanding of the voodoo doll. It's not the doll, it's what the well-honed practitioner puts into the doll and what the doll then therefore connects to. So when you use effigies of people, and this is one of the ways that you can do protection sorcery from a very interesting point of view, if you do an actual effigy of the individual for whom the protection is from the perpetrator, and you affect that effigy in a way that it cannot make decisions, it cannot cross into your space, what you've done is you've done protection sorcery from the point of view of stopping the perpetrator, as opposed to this, what can be a very draining experience when one is surrounding one's world in protection. Because what if you travel? You know, Chris says you have to go outside sometimes. What if you go to work? How does that work? When you're not in the place, is the place still protected? But if you disable, and this is where it crosses into justice and banishment, if you disable the perpetrator, this is protection. It's not just banishing. It's not just justice. It's not just putting sorcery on someone to affect them in some way. It's actually protection. If somebody is stalking you and you are in a situation where you're afraid to turn the corner because that person might be there, you can't. Well, you can, but it's exhausting to try to put protection on everywhere you go. It's like you'd be walking in a bubble. So in that case, you reach out with your sorcery and you deal with physics and you deal with polarities, directional sorcery, you put yourself in the static practice, you do whatever is necessary to be done, and there's a lot about this in the Blood Sorcery Bible, Volume 2, because it's called Striking the Target. And you deal with the perpetrator. The protection, justice, and banishment sorcery that you're doing is on the perpetrator. So when they get up out of their armchair ready to start some crap with you, they're sitting back down. And that is, in my mind, the most effective kind of way to address this. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's better to, if you can stop it before it happens, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
After it's already started and everything's set in motion, and like you said, the guy got up out of the chair and is moving, now you've got his momentum that you've got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got to stop it while they're still sitting there contemplating what they're doing. Because while you're getting your energy going to stop this, you've got the opposite coming into play. They're going to be thinking about you. They're going to be concentrating on you. They're going to be obsessing about you. That's what they do. That's why they're called stalkers.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to nip that in the bud. You have to either disrupt the process in their head so that they can't concentrate that hard on it, or you've got to immobilize them that they cannot move. You've got to basically take their legs out from underneath them.
Right, exactly, because you can't predict everything that someone is going to do over a long period of time. A tiny little trigger can set them off. Stalkers are a very interesting thing, Chris. I'm glad you used that word, because I have a lot of clients who come to me about being stalked, and we have to define what that is sometimes. And when I say, well, is the person calling you, is the person annoying you, or are you afraid to turn the corner? So when they're afraid to turn the corner, we do the kind of sorcery where we impact the ability for the stalker to make a choice to come near them. And that's the kind of thing that is very helpful in those kinds of situations. Mary, do you have any comments from the chat room?
Well, I was. I think if I was in person, you would throw something at me, Sorceress. But I'm going to ask this question. So, what about the folks? What about the folks who believe that karma will take care of these people?
Well, I would not throw something at you because this is an important question. Because karma is the best way to get yourself dead. And by this I mean if you think that waiting around and knowing it will all even out in the way and some kind of giant scales of justice is going to happen, then spend 5 minutes in a morgue where everyone who comes in has come in from unexpected death or criminality. I've seen more dead children. I have seen more children raped to death. I've seen children beaten to death. I've seen spouses who have shot each other in the face because they had a bad day. I've seen all manner of kinds of things. But I will tell you that the common thread in many of these cases was that there was plenty of warning. There was an original situation of violence. There was comments that violence was going to occur, all sorts of things. Karma is the way that one is controlled. And you know what? If you don't like my position on this, I'm absolutely sure there's an off button on Blog Talk Radio or on your phone or on Facebook, and you can go unfriend me. You can set my books on fire. You can do whatever you want. I am not budgeable on this position. There is no reasonable understanding of karma. Karma is the way that we are controlled by other people who want us to sit nicely and take it the hard way. That's what it is. If there was karma, there wouldn't be 7-year-olds raped and killed on their way home from school and left in a dumpster, and the guy gets off, after 10 years or doesn't even get caught. This is bullshit. Karma is just one more level of being manipulated into believing we should just sit nicely and wait for people who know better to take care of it. Whether that's God or it's some judge somewhere or it's the police, it's nonsense. And the flip side of karma, because you asked, Mary, and here we go. The flip side of karma is that one has to look at one's own participation in things and know that if you, and this is the theory, this is not my theory, this is the theory. If you do bad things will happen to you. Well, let me tell you something. I'd really like to see the proof of that because the streets are filled with folks who have done really bad things, and they will never see punishment for that in this lifetime. It will never happen. Karma is not a question of what you should or shouldn't do. We are adults. What you should or shouldn't do should be in your consciousness, and you should know the difference. You shouldn't need somebody to tell you, if you steal that or if you kill that person or if you sleep with someone's husband who happens to be your sister, because you brought that up earlier, bad things will happen to you. That's not how it works. If you do that stuff and you are artful about it, you won't get caught. But you have to live with that, and that is the sense of integrity that we must have. When someone comes to me and says, I want you to kill my husband because he's having an affair with somebody else, I say, you know what, that's not really reasonable. When somebody comes to me and says, you know what, my husband needs to be eradicated because he raped our 3 young daughters, I just found out there's proof of that, and he has a circle of people that he's involved in that are part of that kind of thing, then I say to myself, okay, now it's up to me. What do I want to do? And I will tell you that I stand by every decision that I make, and that takes integrity, it takes guts, if you want to use that word, but it takes a singular mind. I stand in the truth of the choices that I make every single day, whether they are tiny choices or they're huge choices. So I don't need karma to tell me what I should and shouldn't do. So that's my answer to that, Mary, and you had to know that was coming.
That's why I sent it out there. It's funny because the chat room is saying, Naomi said it's about people not wanting to take responsibility for their actions. And Morgan was saying, I had asked a question to the room about, how do we feel about taking justice into our own hands? And Morgan said, is there any other way to take it? If you wait for others to do it, you wait a long, long time, and maybe it'll be too late when it happens. Look at how long convicted killers survive on death row during appeals.
That's right. Morgan is absolutely right.
And that's even if they make it to death row. It's like how many people, like the Sorceress said, how many people are out there that did shit wrong and are still walking around that will never get caught, that nobody will ever know that they did it? And, everybody's like, oh, well, they'll get it when they die. Oh, bullshit. That
they
just
don't.
makes you feel good. So when you go to sleep at night, or when you go to bed, you can go to sleep because you know that somebody's going to look over at you, and if somebody comes and beats you over the fucking head while you're sleeping and takes all your money, if they don't get caught, they're going to get it in the afterlife. They ain't going to get the damn thing. If they don't leave fingerprints, if they don't leave anything behind, nobody's going to find them, and they're going to get away with the perfect crime. That's how it works.
That is actually how it works, and you're absolutely right about that. And there's 2 points to be made on that. The first one is this term: should I take justice into my own hands? Well, many people are going to have a problem with this, but this is the show you turned on tonight. If not your hands, whose hands? It happened to you. So why not your hands? So if you say to me that something terrible happened to you and you're praying to Jesus for justice, and I say, you know what, I'm not praying to Jesus because I have no acceptance that guy ever existed, that he's some amalgam story that people needed to be able to wrap themselves up in the false protection of karma. So instead of that, how about you sit down and you do some kind of energy manipulation and you make sure that guy is caught and there's some kind of justice. That's taking justice into your own hands. It happened to you. Why would you sit by passively and let somebody else do all the work? This whole thing of not taking justice into your own hands on some level seems ridiculous to me. I think you should take justice into your own hands on a level that you are comfortable with. I'm not saying you can stoop to the level of the actions of the person who we're talking about, because some people can't. If a guy came in their house and clubbed you over the head, like Chris said, and did any manner of things to you or took your belongings, maybe you're not the kind of person who can climb in his window and club him to death. Maybe you are. I don't know. But what you can do is you can find somebody who can help you with some energy manipulation so that guy's never going to do that again. Justice needs to be taken on many levels into your own hands. You cannot sit passively by and let the world step all over you and wait for your docket number to come up. It doesn't work that way. That's what sorcery is for. If I said I was just praying on it, then I'd be fine. But because I'm not saying I'm praying on it, because I'm saying that I'm manipulating energy to get it to be right, to make a right situation for me to live with, then apparently that's not, acceptable. That's the first point. And the other point is this afterlife stuff. I've spoken to them. I speak to the disincarnate every single day of my life. I've been doing this for decades. That is the truth. You want to talk to people who've sat with me and given me no information, and I tell them who's standing behind them, and then we have a conversation about it. There are plenty of those people. And what I can tell you is the following thing. It does not get evened out in the afterlife. If there are people who are dead, who that individual has wronged in the afterlife, they will work out some kind of thing. It's not a justice game. People become more of who they are when they're disincarnate. If somebody was a violent lunatic flesh, they will be more violent and more interested in causing fear in the state of being disincarnate. There is no karma for them there either. There's no heaven or hell. I've spoken to thousands of them. No one has any evidence of that. If there was evidence of that, I speak evidentiary only, experiential, the things that I've seen, that I've heard. If there was evidence of that, I would report it. But there is not. So at the end of the day, there's no evening up. There's no finish line where we all get a sticker and a trophy for showing up. It just doesn't end that way. So this whole idea of, it's going to be fine, it's all going to even out, he'll get his, he doesn't. That's the end of the story. He doesn't. So take it into your own hands. Mary, anything in the chat room to add to that?
Well, I was going to bring up a point. We got a question about, have you ever done protection or justice work for those, in the, as a disincarnate, or, either vice versa, done justice for folks who have passed on. So for the disincarnate, have you done justice work? And, against the disincarnate, have you done justice work?
Well, I've done justice work where I've spoken to the disincarnate and something needs to be cleared up here because they can't handle it not being cleared up. I have absolutely done that work. And that work is very tricky because they will be on top of you until you do it. You make an agreement like that, you're in it for the long haul. Those cases do exist. I'm very careful about them because once you agree to something like that, you're in it as in it as the disincarnate wants you to be, and they have nothing but time. So that kind of thing can be very tricky. When you say against the disincarnate, do you mean that a disincarnate is a perpetrator in some way, like stalking or possession, this kind of thing? And in that case, of course, I have done quite a bit of that, of using sorcery to manipulate away the energy of an individual who happens to be disincarnate from a living individual. Yeah, and you can look at that as dealing with possession or exorcism or inhabitation, because all those things are different. Or you can look at it as someone who doesn't want someone living in the house that they used to live in. You get a lot of that. Or you get someone who's just disincarnate and they're just fascinated with someone and kind of want to touch them and feel them all the time. That kind of thing happens, and that is essentially a kind of stalking. That is not really protection justice. It is a protection and justice sorcery. That is the kind of sorcery where one has to go in and sever the tie. And yes, the result is protection, but what happens is it's more like banishment, breaking the connection between those two and helping the living be free of a particular disincarnate who's sort of stuck onto them. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if someone, I can think of a scenario that, a woman came to me and her brother had assaulted her when she was a child, but he's passed on. And, I'm just thinking about, if she wanted she didn't have any closure from it, she didn't have any healing from it. How do you work with that as far as from a justice perspective? Do you do anything? Because now he's in the disincarnate.
Well, it matters on what the living person wants. If the living person wants that disincarnate to come forward and admit that they did it, that can be done. You have several layers of difficulty there because you have to create a situation, and this is what we're going to do with the Blood Project, where we open this battery and allow other people to hear the disincarnate's voices and perhaps even see them. If you want to hear from the disincarnate and you want them to say to you, I did that, I acknowledge that, this can be done, providing you can create an open portal in the living person so that they can hear that. Most often you can. If a person has created such difficulty for another, a disincarnate has created such a difficult situation for someone who's still living, you can usually get that portal open so that they can hear the language or have some kind of proof that communication has been made. But if you're talking about punishing them, punishing the disincarnate is a very tricky thing. The disincarnate want pretty much one thing and one thing only: is they want contact. And they want contact either with a specific individual, or they want to increase their ability to make contact amongst those of us who can hear and see them. I feel that the worst thing you can do to an individual who's disincarnate is to block their ability to make those connections. And it can be done. But to check on it, you have to check in with them occasionally. And when you check in with them occasionally, you have to sort of open that portal again and see if they are still in that state. They most certainly are. But I do require that if I'm going to do that kind of work, that I check on it and make sure it's still in place. So, yes, you can punish them in that way, but you are talking about punishing someone for their experience of eternity. And, if you're okay with that, which in some cases I have been, then that's a thing to do. I mean, I had a client whose father was a well-known serial killer. And he continued to sort of touch her and talk to her just as she was about to fall asleep, and to constantly tell her details of the crimes. She was starting to know grisly details of the crimes because he wanted someone to know, and he knew she could hear him. So in that sense, we had to block him from her and block him from everyone that he could communicate with. Make sense?
A little more intense than a Facebook block, I think. I'm just saying.
A little bit.
I unfriend you, punk.
I don't know, Mary. Some people are very sensitive.
That's true. That's very true.
Sometimes you unfriend someone or you block them, and they really lose control. It's kind of strange.
It's true. So
too big of a thing. Go ahead.
I have a comment from the chat room that Morgan has here, and then I have a question from someone else. But you're going to laugh when you hear this from Morgan. He said, what I really can't understand is people who send white light to those who are hurting others on the grounds that they need, quote, healing. Unless white light is the street name of a hitman, this seems to be an insane approach.
Well, didn't I tell you that's my business name?
White light hitman, that's you, right? 'Cause every 20 minutes
I
or so.
thought you said white lightning. I'm sorry.
No, I think white light is interesting too. White light hitman. Every 20 minutes or so in my life, I fall a little bit more in love with Morgan, and the more comments, the more I understand the brilliant grade A mind that is Morgan. Yeah, well, here's the deal with that. Most people think that everybody is salvageable, but that's not true. And if you really get in the street about things, if you really deal with clients who are struggling, if you really deal with people in trouble, people who are experiencing a life outside the life that they want because of the actions of another, what you come to understand if you have half consciousness is that some people are garbage and they need to be eradicated. And they have made the choice to be garbage, and they've gotten to the line of fire of somebody willing to eradicate them. So not everybody is healed with love and light, because love and light is a vague, new age, witchy-poostis barrel of nonsense. If you meet people who are really predators and you want to send them love and light, what they're going to do is accept it so they can get you in the cage and kill you. That's how it works. They'll let you come closer and closer and closer. The universe is 70% dark matter. I've said this a million times now. I've said it 1,000,001 times. To contemplate that this idea of the light and this idea that people interpret love in the same way, to put oneself in the vulnerability of that is absurd. Sending love and light I understand it as some idea that healing is available for everyone. But here's the deal. Not everybody is sick or ill in their mind. Some people are just exactly what they want to be. And those people don't need to be healed because they don't consider themselves unwell. So this concept of I can love you into betterment, I can love you into wellness, is just a way for the victim to not have to accept the experience of being violated. That's really how I see it. What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, I've said before, now the flaming can start, that people want to sit there and go, this person's evil, there's all this shit, and we're good, bad, and all this. Well, in all honesty, if you look at the people that dealt with Hitler in his prime, they thought he was brilliant. And in his mind, he was doing right. Now, where do you draw the line? And I'm not making light of what happened during World War II, but you have a lion in the jungle, which is a predator, and you have a gazelle, which obviously is part of their prey. And the lion hunts down the gazelle and eats it. Okay? Now, does that make the lion evil? Because in the lion's mind, it's doing what it's supposed to do, but in the gazelle's mind, it's being bad. It's the same way with people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fix technically what's not broken. If they believe they're right, then who the hell are you to sit there and say, well, I'll love them and give them light and heal them? They can't be healed because they think they're right. Like I said, you can't fix what isn't broken.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's two sides to every story. Everybody, three sides. There's the right, there's your side, my side, and then there's the truth. And that's where people stumble over. That nobody wants to take the truth. That, hey, there's a possibility both sides are wrong, or both sides are right. It doesn't have to be right and wrong. Just because you don't like what they did doesn't necessarily, in their mind, make it wrong. So where do you...
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry. I thought you were...
So it's like, where can you heal something that somebody don't want healed?
Well, that's exactly the point, because you're 1,000% right. And we're not talking about gray areas here. We're not talking about. I have a real thing about child killers. It's my thing. You want to get me crazy and you want to get me going. Show me a child killer or a child molester, and I'm going to be all over it. And you want to talk about screw karma. Okay, there you go. So, but what happens when people start to decide exactly what you're saying, Chris, what's right and what's wrong, what's protectable against, what's not protectable against? I mean, if you think about things like civil rights, this kind of thing, there are times in history where one group of people think it's dangerous for another group of people to go to college. And you look at that and you say, now at this remove, you look at that and you know it's absurd. A person of a decent mind at that time would know it's absurd. But the fear, this sense that, if these people get educated, this kind of ridiculousness, they're going to come after us, they're going to take over our world. So these kinds of things, the decision of what is right and what is wrong, I mean, maybe that's a whole different show. But when you're talking about feeling perpetrated against, the lion gazelle example was brilliant. But what happens if you're the gazelle's mother? This is the question. And the client that comes to me is the gazelle's mother. And this is a curious thing, because now I've got a lion whose natural thing is to prey upon gazelle. And the gazelle's all injured because the lion almost got it. And I'm dealing with the mother. So for me, I deal in the facts. I deal with that gazelle in that moment in time needs to be protected from that lion. And it's not a judgment about whether or not the lion's trying to feed. And this is where it gets tricky. This is where you get in these situations where you have a lot to think about. The volume of people I talk to who want to be clients, and it certainly isn't everybody. I certainly say no many, many more times than I say yes. They are more often than not, in a sense, and I don't mean this actually, but the gazelle's mother, another party who's looking at this saying, this person is a victim. Or the gazelle itself, which can say to me, I don't want to be eaten by the lion. I totally get that the lion is a predator. I totally get that the lion wants to feed. I don't want to be eaten by the lion. So protection sorcery has many, many layers of how you look at it and the potential for what it is, because you might decide it's okay to protect that gazelle from getting eaten by that lion in the same breath that you know that lion is only trying to feed. So there are many, many levels of this thing, and that, if you don't mind, moves us a little bit into this concept of the disincarnate or demons, because disincarnate just want to talk to you. They want to be heard. They want to know that as they go through an experience of a period of time, and you don't really recognize time, which can, I think, be frustrating when they deal with us, the currently living. And all they want is communication. All they want is touch. All they want is to remember what it felt like to be back in the body. So they're pervasive. They're coming at you. And this is a perfect example, Chris, and I'm grateful that you came up with the lion and the gazelle, because the living human being is the gazelle. And the lion is the disincarnate that simply want communication. So without judging the lion, what I will do is put something between that lion and the gazelle. And that lion's going to have to feed somewhere else because this gazelle can't handle it. And this is a very particular kind of protection sorcery. Thoughts?
Yeah, I believe I'm real hesitant to do what I call like a gunshot spell, where it goes out in such a spreaded area, so much area is covered that you get collateral damage. I'd rather do something that's more precise, right to the point, and if it's bothering you, I'm not going to impose more upon it than I have to. Like if you're having trouble with somebody in your house that your house is haunted, okay, fine. I'm not going to pretty much tie up that person. Like you said, I'll put up a barrier so you can't be bothered. It's not my place sometimes to put that kind of restriction on them, because I don't know the whole story. I only know what you're telling me and bits and pieces of what I'm hearing from the other side. And it all comes down to, okay, your side, his side, where's the truth? So I don't like to do it. I mean, I'll do it if I have to, but I don't like to do that.
So what you're talking about completely immobilizing the other side.
Yeah, I would not do that. I would not completely, if we're dealing with the disincarnate. If we're dealing with live human beings, that, there's a danger involved, like you said, with a kid, or a guy, is going after women, or things like that, then yes, I will totally immobilize that person if I have to. But dealing with...
Go ahead.
But dealing with the disincarnate, I would rather just block you from them.
Right, but sometimes protection is just breaking the connection.
Right.
Sometimes, and that can be with the disincarnated. It could be with two living human beings. It could be any of those things. People are. I just got a private message on Facebook, which is interesting. I don't know why they didn't go through Blog Talk Radio, but it said, please talk about rituals. Please talk about how we do it. And that's really not going to be the purpose of the show tonight, because I could, I teach that. If you're interested in that, then, contact me about a class about rituals for protection, or the book will be out in a week or two anyway. So, but that's not the point. What we're talking about tonight is methodology in a broader spectrum of things. One of the things that I want to talk about is demons and how they fit into what you need to be protected from. And that's going to, of course, flip us a little bit into the concept of possession and that kind of thing. But before we do that, it's already 9:11. What a coincidence. And I want Mary to talk about what she's going to be doing on this show going forward as of next week. She's going to be doing a special segment. I want to say something for a minute, though, about when I decided I wanted to do the show and why I asked Mary and Chris in. Chris, I love talking to you. I've been enjoying talking to you for quite some time on Facebook and then however we communicate. And the thing that I love about Chris is that he will take his life experience raw and just tell you about it. And there it is, and it's so wonderful. And his knowledge is so broad, he doesn't even know how much he knows. And Chris has forgotten more than most people will ever learn. And Mary has such, she does a lot of other things, but I have to tell you, I've been a teacher to her. We've worked together on a few things, and she came to me just to learn what I do. She didn't come to me to learn to do what she does, because she brings that in its entirety in a very strong way. Mary is a fantastic divinator, and she has many other skills, but I am so impressed with her ability to do divination that when I put the show together, what I said was, Mary will eventually do a maybe 10 or 15-minute segment right in the middle of the show where she starts to talk to people and do some on-the-air divination. And I know she's not going to do that tonight, but I'd love to hear her talk about what she intends to do when that's up and running next week. Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do with folks is folks can send questions through the Facebook page, the Dark Matters Radio Show with the Sorceress Cagliastro, or they can send them to me directly through my email, which is theshotgunmary@gmail.com. And then if they get chosen to get on the air, what we'll do is we'll take their question, and I may use many different divination tools. We could use dominoes, we could use tarot, whatever, but really kind of delve deep into the subject to have them look at their situation, bring in some information for them to use, and then maybe add on a layer of, some work that they can do to help with their situation. So really it's going to take the time to go into someone's question and see different divination methods we can use, and then give them a tool or some tools to walk away with. So, again, folks can find, submit a question through the Dark Matters Radio Show with the Sorceress Cagliastro page or through my email at theshotgunmary@gmail.com.
Thank you. And I want to tell anyone who is interested in divination to take advantage of this, because this is a real opportunity. When we start talking about divination, and I teach classes on divination, and I wrote a little book called Divination for the Practitioner, I just want to say that divination is not separate from sorcery. We're not talking about fortune-telling. That's a different thing. And by fortune-telling, I mean sort of a watered-down version of, will he love me forever, will I get the ring that I want, and blah, blah, blah. And divination reaches into the real depth of things. If I do these things, how will this affect my life? Do you feel that if this is coming my way, I'm going to be able to handle it? Talking about illness, all kinds of things. Divination is a requirement. When a client comes to me and says to me, this, and this is happening, the first thing I do is I do some divination. And I say, let me really read this and see if you are who you say you are, if the situation is what you say it is, and if the other individual is involved in the way that you say they're involved. So I rely on my own divination skills in a very powerful and profound way. A lot of people come to me just for a divination session. And Mary mentioned briefly the dominoes and all these sorts of materials, and we talk quite a bit about divination and what you can use for it and what it is. So I'm thinking, Mary, down the road very shortly we should do a show on divination where we should talk about, these methods and the kinds of options that there are. But if you have questions and you want to talk to somebody who really knows how to see the long-term sort of chronological experience or rollout of where you are now, then you should find Mary and you should talk to her, because she really can help you look at how things play out and what your participation is in it. And the other great thing is, because this is the kind of show that it is, what Mary was saying was great. People can come to you with questions, and we can look at those questions. She can look at those questions, and then maybe all together we could talk about what kind of sorcery one would do and this kind of thing. But if you have those kinds of questions, find Mary. So thank you for that, Mary.
Sure, and I just want people to be prepared, too, because it isn't going to be a fortune-telling session. That's why
right.
I have that nickname, Shotgun Mary, because I shoot straight from the hip and I tell the truth. And so just to be ready for that, it isn't going to be hug you and sprinkle glitter on you. Just saying.
Mary, I've heard that about you.
I've got a theory about glitter. I think glitter was invented so that women could find out when their husbands are going to strip clubs.
Really? Wow.
Because that you can get Chanel No. 5 off of you just by going to a garage somewhere and using the restroom and using soap and washing your face. But it takes forever to get glitter off of you.
Chris, the evolved woman wouldn't mind if her husband went to a strip club. I'm just saying.
But I think that all the strip clubs all the women got together from the town and went to all the strip clubs and said, okay, you're going to use this color, you're going to use this color, and you're going to use this color, so we know where your husband's been.
Wow, that's sort of like forensic glitter, Chris. Like the forensic look at glitter. It was that well laid out. Mary, thank you for saying that there'll be no lightweight here, because the point of this show, and this show is because there's three of us, it just in nature is a little bit lighter than me talking for a half hour by myself. And the experience of us communicating amongst ourselves and with others makes it a little bit lighter, but the information still gets out. And to the point of divination, I just want to say this one thing. If you're going to a reader and they're telling you everything is great and absolutely every choice you're making is wonderful, and yes, he will show up and he will love you forever and you will get the job and your hair will look great.
Bullshit.
That was great, because that person is completely full of it, because a person who truly understands what divination is somebody who can help you look at the chronological experience of where you are now based on where you intend to be and how all the things fit in. So, if your reader is telling you that you're the best thing that ever happened to the whole world, get a new reader. And I suggest, somebody on this show is what I suggest. So I want to talk about, because it's already 20 after 9, and I want to talk about protection when it comes to demons. And this is something that is a very different kind of topic, and, one that, of course, you may or may not have expected me to address tonight, because I never know exactly what I'm going to say when we get into a topic. But protecting oneself from demons is an interesting thing, because it isn't always necessary. The prayer people will tell you all demons are bad and that the room will go cold and you'll feel dizzy and terrible things will happen to you. That's not really what it is. because demons are very, there's a huge broad spectrum of what they are. I talked about 26 demons in my book, 26 Demons Revisited, and those 26 demons were demons who came to me over 10 years of time, consistently. There were many more, but these were really consistent, and the things that drew them were very consistent, and the way to bring them to you is very consistent, so I chose those 26. And people ask me all the time, what if you bring in a demon and you can't get rid of it? How do you protect yourself from demons? And then there's the religious people who say, oh, you know, you must protect yourself from demons at all times. I saw something on, I don't even know if it was Facebook or wherever, where it said like all skateboarders and I don't remember, a whole list of people were going, you know, to be possessed by demons because they were living outside the laws of their religion. So when it comes to protection from demons, first of all, it's not always necessary. But when it is, understand that it is not about because you didn't believe in God. It's not about because you didn't pray. It's not about because you wore a short skirt. It is not about because you had sex because we're mammals and that's what mammals do. So it's not about any of those things. It's about you have made some kind of profound connection with this energy. And if the energy is coming at you in an aggressive way, then sometimes what the energy is trying to do is utilize your vessel and be part of that experience. But I'd be very interested in if in the chat room or if there's a caller that wants to talk to us about this, what people think regarding protecting themselves from the energy of demons, or if it's necessary, or if there is a way to protect yourself in advance from these kinds of connections. Because most of my students and the people come to me want to do the opposite. They want to be able to open themselves up to the utilization of demons. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, my whole thing with people that get possessed and or have problems with demons is, number one, they read things that they shouldn't because they don't understand the material that's put in front of them.
Mm.
You know, they're reading stuff on the internet, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're a wizard. You know, and you know, shit don't work that way. I mean, it is trial and error, and yeah, I screwed up a lot, and I pay for it every goddamn day I get up. Sometimes when I sleep, if I sleep. And they don't understand that. If they get, it's almost the same as somebody that shoots themselves with a loaded gun. If you didn't take the time to check the safety, to make sure the damn thing was unloaded, to use your own common sense to make sure that you're protected, that you did everything you could not to have this happen to you, then you deserve it. You know, you deserve to be tormented.
So you're saying that that they are out there and that they are interested in participating, and that one of the things that we must do, or that people must do, generally speaking, is keep themselves in a state of not becoming vulnerable by playing or dabbling. Is that what you're saying?
Right. You know, they do want to communicate, just like the disincarnate do. They want that connection with the people, you know, with living people. Like they want to become whole again.
Yeah.
But
well, the difference is... Go ahead, Chris, sorry.
But if you don't know what you're dealing with, you're leaving yourself wide open. You've got to understand, number one, what it is, you know, how you can deal with it. You've got to come to some kind of agreement with it. If say, well, like you stated in your book, you know, 26 demons. If you're going to have this demon do this for you, and it says, well, I want this in return, well, you better make damn sure that you do it, or you're going to end up being screwed. And so many people don't do the right homework, and they don't fulfill what they're supposed to do as far as the contracts go.
Well, that's absolutely true, and this is a good point, because protection from demons requires one to be completely straightforward and to bring their whole game to the table. And when we make connections with demons, and we've talked about this from the point of view of making those connections and then from the point of view of those connections being made upon an individual without them allegedly doing anything to bring it forward, when we make these connections with demons, what demons hear is, I'm coming over and I'm staying. They don't hear that there's going to be a brief interaction. They don't even understand that. That's why when I say we work with demons, we have to have an end point. You have to have a way to remove them. You have to have a way to say that that this interaction is coming to an end. And, I wasn't originally going to talk about demons tonight, but people often ask me, how do I protect myself from demons? To your point, Chris, people read things, you mean like grimoires and whatnot, that talk about demons and ways to invoke them, and they think it's something they can just sort of do. But demonic energy is an amalgam. It comes from a wide group of experiences where there is either animosity or anger or confusion, chaos, negativity, depression, sadness, any of these things. And it comes together in this energy and creates a force. And the force over time, very much like a tornado, picks up things. And as it picks up things, it becomes more defined. As it becomes more defined, it becomes more intellectual and can participate via making of decisions. At the top end of that, we have attending demons who will, of course, be able to communicate with us on a higher plane. But when we talk about protecting ourselves from demons, awareness is a very important thing. But the thing that is extremely important is this idea of dabbling. And, I start the show with one subject. We might end with another subject. It's okay because it's all connected. Mm-hmm. And after years of teaching, what I've come to understand is that there is no cubbyhole in which to discuss the most important thing. It all connects to something else. And if it doesn't connect, then it isn't a system and it doesn't work. So it has to connect. This idea of dabbling in sorcery and dabbling in the work of demons kind of goes back to what the question that Morgan had asked regarding putting up huge amounts of energy to protect the walls of their house is very draining. If you don't know what you're doing with demons, not only will it be draining, but it could be deadly. They can get to you on a very profound level. They can take you apart because they are not disincarnate human beings. They don't know what they're even doing to us. They don't know that they are invading us on a personal level or taking away liberties or this kind of thing. So they have no point of reference. So when you feel like there's demons around, it is always a good idea to talk to somebody who knows how to handle them and who has an understanding of how to keep them away. The best way to keep demons away for most people is to not invoke them, not bring them in to begin with. This is a very important thing. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. There's no reason for a demon to be near you unless you invoke it, as far as from what I've seen. I'm pretty sure you have seen different. But mostly what I've run into is, well, I did this. Or this thing is bothering me and I don't know what it is. Well, the first thing I say is, what'd you do? Because there's really, I don't see just out of random that they just walk up to you and say, hi, I'm a demon. That's storybook stuff. That's fairy tales. It has to be a reason. Something happened where you are. You did something you shouldn't have done. You were involved in something you shouldn't have been involved in. There was you stumbled into a house. It all goes back to the person that's having the problem. That's why I always say, what did you do? And so many people don't want to take that blame. It's always, well, I didn't do anything. Yeah, well, I think if you really look, you're going to see that you did. You're the one that kicked...
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's always some sort of pull. There's always some sort of vulnerability point. And when it comes to things like demons, I want to for a minute go back to what real protection sorcery is. And, I realize that this is something I wanted to talk about tonight, which I didn't get to. But talking about demons sort of brings me back there, because the truth is that energy is connected to more energy, so there's a continuous feed of energy. And it must be discovered and handled sort of like a diagnostic tool. So I want to mention that when one wants to do protection sorcery, there doesn't always have to be an event. one can do protection sorcery on oneself by doing sort of a survey of what's going on. This type of approach is really good for people who struggle with patterns, struggle with trust. And when I say struggle with trust, I don't mean that you can't trust or you don't really have a brief understanding in the moment. I'm saying that in a much larger scale. You're looking at your life, you're seeing what you have, what's around you, the people that are around you. Sometimes protection sorcery has to be done on the person because they are just a sponge. They're just someone who people can step on. They are a walking victim, whether it's demons or disincarnate or the living, it doesn't matter. They're a certain type of trusting type, in the very broadest example, presenting themselves in a way where you could just walk up to them and take something from them. And there are many people who come to me and say, you know, every time I turn around, somebody's screwing me over. They'll say they spent a little time with somebody who turned on them. They'll say that they were trying to talk to the dead, and suddenly they are surrounded by disincarnate who are acting in inappropriate ways. So when I talk about protection, I always say the same thing. I say that when you go to protect yourself, you have a desire for a bubble around you, you have to look at not only what's in there with you, but who you are. Because it's not just the lion in the house with you if you're going to put protection over your life. It is the vulnerability within the self. And when I teach protection sorcery, the whole first half hour at least, we talk about excavating where the entry points are. And really protection is prevention. And I know that it sounds almost like another subject or that other things are involved in, but the fact is that that's how protection sorcery best works. Look at your own portals. I'm talking about troubleshooting for where the holes may be in order to discover where the malevolent energies can get in. And by malevolent energies, all I mean is energies that when they interact with you specifically have a negative, and by negative I mean displeasing or inconveniencing kind of experience. Essentially, you want to look at where the bricks are kicked out of your own house and where the wind blew in. So whether it's a demon, and, you know, to Chris's point, this kind of thing where you're dabbling, it's very, very dangerous. If you are dabbling in sorcery, if you're dabbling in difficult relationships, if you're dabbling with people who are living in a world outside of your zone of understanding how to function, you know, where one day you decide you want to leave the conventional life and join a group of people who are living outside of that, anything that you do opens you up to situations where protection might be necessary. When I talk about protection and justice, the second half is not necessarily always justice. The second half is, first half is protection, then we talk about protection from the inside. What are you doing that's creating an environment where people will cross you? You know, I talk about this often. I walk down the street. Well, say somebody walks down the street, and there's something about them that's extraordinarily vulnerable. And you know those people. You can see them. And you know that if there's somebody walking down the street with them, and by walking down the street, I don't just mean walking down the street. I mean walking through life, somebody looking to interact with them. And you see someone who's got, like, victim stamped on their forehead, somebody who is permeable, somebody who has holes in their story, somebody who is weak or looks like someone that can be taken from. And you know those people, you see them all the time, and you just know that somebody is going to cross into that, whether it is a living human being with malintent, whether it is a disincarnate who feels the need to communicate with people and has chosen this person and is going non-stop, and or whether it is a demon. So this is the kind of thing that we need to look at, is protection from the inside. Where are the holes? Mary, are there any questions that are coming across from this information?
Yeah, Morgan actually brought up a question. He said, for those who do not work with this on an advanced level, are there any sort of warning signs that a demon or demons may be focused in a certain area? I'm thinking about areas of great natural energy fields that demons like to plug into. Is there something that he can give clients who do not live in sorcery as a sort of pointer or red flag to watch out for?
Yeah, sure there is. There's two parts of that I want to answer. First of all, he mentioned the concept of areas. And we've talked about areas, physical areas on the planet, places where people go to do things, like we talked the other night about the Japanese suicide forest and this kind of thing, where there is an embedded state of demonic energy that is causing people to feel that they have the permission to do things in this area that they might not do in other areas. So there's definitely energy pockets of this kind of thing. But the bulk of that question is really, what are the warning signs? And this is a great question because people will tell you all kinds of things. They'll tell you the walls will bleed and the food will rot and all kinds of stuff. But that's not what we're really talking about. Demons cause chaos. They are an amalgam of energy that learns to live with itself and is not really all from one place or one activity or one experience. So therefore, they are always in chaos, like a house full of people who are always trying to figure out a way to survive together in their house. So when you find that you are different in a way, when you find that your ability to have a solid, focused thought, if you've been someone for whom that has been a relatively simple or comfortable way of being, you can't get to the point where you can produce those focused, solid thoughts anymore. If you find that you are splitting off in a way where you are suddenly drawn to things that you've never, ever been drawn to before and that are outside of your comfort zone. And I say outside of your comfort zone, and that can mean a number of things. I don't just mean like you're expanding your horizons. I'm saying where you're suddenly drawn to something so far into the area of discomfort where it's sort of a red flag. When you find that you would define yourself as becoming more and more chaotic, when you find that you would define yourself as becoming more easily upset, more angry, more confused, when you find that you are doing things or enacting in behaviors that are not comfortable to you. And you notice my language is not about judgment. It's not about good and bad behavior, right and wrong behavior. It's individual. It's every individual noticing that today something is extraordinarily different. This kind of thing can be very clearly looked at as more than mood swings if it goes on for a period of time or if it increases. Demonic energy sets in. It sits in, it gets comfortable, and it starts to consider you just one other member in the house it has to get along with. So there's a lot of that energy, and if you want to think of it as a lot of them and one of you in the house, and the house being you, then you can see that you're now in a brand new place trying to adjust to a lot of new information, a lot of new experiences, and with no rules. So this kind of upsetment of comfortability occurs. And that can go very broad. It can go all the way into a behavior that you would have ordinarily considered abhorrent, and I'm not going to define what that is because that could be anything. And you become very, very uncomfortable. Extraordinarily disturbing dreams sometimes are caused by the presence of demons because they create an unrest for you. So they are able to communicate with you in the sleep process because it starts to not really be a sleep process. It starts to be a process where you might have less participation in the use of your body and mind, but it isn't really sleep. So there are many things that come in this way that cause these kinds of, broad distractions. And if it's your house, if it's like you're in your home and you feel that their energy is in your home but not necessarily in you, you will find that there will be a change in the environment. There might be a change in temperature. There might be all those classically thought of things, but there will be more subtle things. There will be the way that you act in your environment. You will suddenly, perhaps not remember where things are, or the rooms feel like they've changed places for you. So, because chaos is a powerful energy, and it's like a tornado through your conscious understanding of your own baseline. These kinds of things happen. It's not that the whole house will go cold. I mean, these are, extraordinary situations, most of which are not things that happen in the beginning, because the question was really based on the early warning signs. Is that what you think Morgan's asking, Mary?
I do, yeah. I think it's because people don't know what to expect. They see the things on TV, like you said, the classic signs, and then it's, if those don't happen, they don't really know what to do with it, and then there's problems.
Right. Well, this is not Amityville, and I personally have no acceptance of, and because I brought it up, let me finish the sentence. I don't accept that there were demons in that house. I accept that there was an individual who was extremely unbalanced and whose own changes, chemical and otherwise, and he created the situation that occurred there. But when you see a film like that, or you see, these kinds of reports about demons and walking upside down on the stairs and all this kind of things and contortions and whatnot, I will tell you that there are some things that I've learned about demons over a period of time. There are parts of the body that they tend to interact with more. They tend to want to feel the backs of human beings. They're very interested in the spine. I don't know why. I'm very good at saying what I don't know. They're very interested in entry points in that way, of entering the body in the spine area, maybe because of the electrical charge in the spinal cord. I don't know, because they're very, very interested in electricity, and that being the place in our body where I think there is probably the greatest flow of that which we can define as electricity in our bodies. And through the heart area, where there's also a required electric charge to keep the heart beating. So there are definitely places in the human being where the changes can be seen a little bit more clearly. But they are not usually these broad scopes until there's a full possession, and then by full possession I mean that the demon is taking more of the energy of the working, living human being and utilizing it in their own way than the working, living human being is utilizing it. But if you're finding extreme changes in the self and in personal desires, and please separate that from personal growth, then that's kind of how that's happening. And this goes back to this concept of protection really being prevention. Knowing yourself, knowing what you would not suddenly want to do, knowing that there are these sudden changes have come, because you would be surprised how many people wouldn't necessarily recognize these things as tremendous fluctuations in their own energy. And how these things come in is because we don't notice them or we don't report them. Or the worst of all is the passive approach where, I'm just going through some kind of change and I'm in chaos all the time. And looking at the possibility of demons for some people is absurd. It just seems like an absurd choice. But demons are everywhere. There's a lot of them. They are free-flowing energy. They don't have a leader. Nobody's telling them they have to stay in one place and behave. And attending demons aside, this is prevalent. There are many of them. They are not attached to the devil. They are not satanic. They are not anti-Christian. They are just energy. They just are. So if you take all the religious crap out of it, you can understand that you are dealing with a powerful energy, and there's ways to protect yourself from that kind of thing. Chris, your thoughts?
Well, it all goes back to, if you're worried about this type of thing, of being possessed, stay away from areas that you think you're going to have problems. Mm-hmm. It's like, quit going to Gettysburg and walking around and trying to, see a ghost. It's like, yeah, you may end up walking away with more than what the hell you intend to. And I don't believe, like you said, half the stuff that they say on TV, because I think it's all bullshit. I haven't seen it, so if I didn't see it, it don't exist.
Well, that's a very good way to be in this discipline, is to know that if you haven't seen it, it doesn't exist, because that will save you from extraneous work and from madness. Because I don't believe in anything. I say that all the time. I only report that which I see. And what I see is when people tell me that they need protection from demons, and I go and I sit with them, that surprisingly enough, more of them are actually experiencing demons than you would think, because there are so many of them. But one of the things that they will eventually confess is that they were, sort of dabbling or trying to bring in an energy or trying to touch that or, playing around in some way, because demons are not wallflowers. They are very interested in participating. And if you give them an inclination that participating is a possibility, they will show up and they will wreak havoc. And to remove them is much more complicated than to not have them come into you to begin with. And, this concept of fear, if you feel this is happening, addressing the demon directly is perfectly okay. I don't want you to participate with me. I don't want to be part of this. By the time they call me, it's so embedded or they're so afraid they can't find their own way out of it anymore. So keeping an eye on the self is extraordinarily important. Mary, what do you think about that?
Well, I was just going to say, I relayed the story to you about when I was lying in bed one night, and there was a lot of activity in the room I was in, and then all of a sudden I started feeling like my back, there was like hands on my back, and, down at the edge of my spine, and I said, oh, no, we're not doing this. Nope, I don't care what you guys are up to. I am not doing this. I am not in the mood for this. Do not try to start messing around with me. Because it was, a room full of chaos. It was just some craziness that was going on, and the radio was going on and off, and I could hear people walking in the room, and then all of a sudden I started feeling that touching, and it was just, I said, no, we're not doing this. I don't care who you are and what you want. You're not getting in my back. You're not going to keep touching me. It's done. And they went away.
That's a very powerful approach to take to it. You have to be fearless. You have to step up. That's what protection is.
Mm-hmm.
And strength, I think your inner strength has a lot to do with it. Like you said about being a target. I mean, if you are a victim and they know you are a victim, they're going to screw with you.
Yes.
If you are a strong individual and they know you're, I don't want to say spiritually, it's not the right word, but you have a strong being about you, and they know you're not going to take any shit off of them, they're not going to bother you.
This goes to protection from the inside, Chris. That's what we were talking about.
Right.
You know the guy. You see the guy walking down the street who's going to get pickpocketed. That's never going to be me.
Right.
I walk down the street. People have the extreme opposite reaction to me. They'll step away, but and I have no problem with that. I would actually much prefer it that way anyway. But you have this sense of not being approachable. And when it comes to living human beings, disincarnate or otherwise, then that sense of not being approachable is important. I want to talk about one thing we mentioned tonight briefly, the kind of protection that puts the other individual out for good. And, I always get a lot of questions about this. Will you kill someone for me? Will you knock somebody down? When I deal with sorcery for protection and justice, what I deal with is I weigh the thing, and by weigh the thing, I mean that there is a device, a sorcery device, and it's not an actual device in your hands, although I guess it is if you think about it in terms of the usability of the energy around you, and where we look at something called the boxes, and I see in the boxes a tableau of what's going on. And will just a little bit of pushing away get this person to stay away from you? Maybe it will, and that's what I'll use. I'll use necessary force. When someone comes to me for protection, what's going to happen is they're going to get protected. And the amount of protection is based on the amount of energy that the individual who is causing the need for protection is exerting. This is what I was saying when I went back and I talked about effigies for a second and dolls and this kind of thing. If you come to me for protection, the very first thing I will do is weigh your danger. And by weighing your danger, I mean looking at that which is coming at you. Whether it's a human being that's living, a disincarnated demon, is irrelevant. What is relevant is that you are in need of protection because of vulnerability. So I will shut down the vulnerability in the individual and then deal with the individual coming at them. These are important things. When I do sorcery, it is for real and it's serious. And when I talk about blood sorcery, that's the best kind of sorcery to use for the process of protection and justice. This is not anything light. This is not, by light I don't mean versus dark, I mean lightweight. This is not a pink candle to push away the darkness. This is not, as we open the show with a circle of salt. This is sorcery. This is blood sorcery. For decades, I've been doing the work of a blood sorceress and a necromancer. That is the work that I do. That's why I bring a show like this together and just let me explain something that's very important, or let me share something that's very important. This is sorcery. It is not the kind of thing that's just sort of for now to kind of put a Band-Aid on some sort of thing. And I use all those vague words because that's what I'm trying to convey. This is blood sorcery. It is not for the faint of heart. If you come to me because you are in crisis, if you come to me because you are being stalked, if you come to me because the disincarnate can't keep themselves out of your bedroom at night, if you come to me because there are demons, what's going to happen is those things are going to be handled. I don't take the work lightly, and I don't have a light approach. The hammer will go down the way the hammer needs to go down. We do something called a heart shot, which is sort of a final way to keep the person away from you. And have I used it? Yes, of course I've used it. I've even taught it. I've even talked about it. We do something called the flatline ritual, which keeps a person unable to fall asleep for long periods of time. Mary, I've shared that information with you. And in a situation like that, what happens is the person who is perpetrating against you, the person who is in your way, the person who's making your life unlivable in the convenient way that you want to live it, will stay awake for so many nights that they become incapacitated with exhaustion. So when you come to me to do this kind of work gets done, but it gets done at the level of which the threat exists, the amount of force needed. There will be no love and light. There will be no negotiating with the perpetrator. There will be no trying to understand the motivation of that individual who is creating a difficulty for you. We go at it as it needs to be gotten to, and that is the deal. Mary, I think we're running out of time. You want to take it?
Sure. So the last thing we'll just let everybody know is that this was the first of our 2-hour shows, and so next week will be, again, a 2-hour show. Thank you so much for joining us this week for the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro. To reach the Sorceress, find her at cagliastrotheironring.com. Chris Rogue-Ostrowski can be reached on Facebook at Hells, H-E-L-S, Rogue at gmail.com. And me, Shotgun Mary, can be reached at theshotgunmary at gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook at the Dark Matters Radio Show with the Sorceress Cagliastro page. Join us again next week when our topic will cover other aspects of blood sorcery. And remember, it's not just for the darkness anymore.
Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate you bringing us in and out. I just want to say one more thing. I want to say that I teach this work with extraordinary responsibility, that when I teach people how to do sorcery, I am essentially putting weapons in their hands for protection and otherwise. And I want to mention this because tonight's subject was protection. When you study with me, you learn how to stand strong in the place that you want to be, to create what you want in your life and take out of your life what you don't want. When you come to someone for sorcery, expect to get results. There will be a new class list coming up sometime this week on cagliastrotheironring.com. I also have an email address, sorceresscagliastro@gmail.com. But I want to say what I often forget to say is that conversations with me are confidential. When you hear me talk about a client on the radio, it's someone that I've said to, hey, can I just talk about the story without saying your name? We are beginning something called The Firm. So, Mary, I know you were going to take us out, but give me a minute here. We're beginning something called The Firm. The Firm is a group of sorcerers and divinators and others that I've brought together to do particular kinds of works in groups. The Firm will handle large-scale situations. It doesn't matter if you're an individual client, a company, a country, doesn't matter. And we will take on very large projects with integrity and with a group of individuals who can work the work that needs to be done under my leadership for each particular project.
Sorceress, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back with you. That's pretty much what I wanted to say, was that The Firm is the next level, and the Blood Project, which we are going forward with which will allow other people to be able to see and hear the disincarnate in an environment in which we have created, working with an energy situation that I will refer to as the battery. Mary, thank you so much for bringing us in and out. Chris, thank you for sharing your time with us on the radio tonight. I just wanted people to understand that this work is serious, it's huge, and big projects are coming forward to allow others who are skeptical or in need and not sure if this is the right venue for them to come in and have an experience of the work. The work only works if it's provable, and that is my point in the work, is to present it in such a way where it's provable. So if this kind of work is something that you're interested in, feel free to contact me and we'll have a conversation. Mary, about next week, what were you saying?
Well, I know that we're looking at topics. We're going to do divination at some point, and next week we're going to look at a different aspect of blood sorcery. So folks will have to tune in or look at the Dark Matters radio show page to find out exactly what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mary. Good night.
Yep. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.